Welcome to the Adoption and Foster Care Journey, a podcast to encourage, educate, and equip you to care for children and youth through adoption, foster, and kinship care. Hosted by an adoptive mom with over 22 years of kinship and adoptive parenting experience. She's on this journey with you. Please welcome Sandra Flach.
For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper and not to harm you, plans to give you hope and a future. Of course, that is Jeremiah 29:11. I am Sandra Flach. Welcome to this episode of the Adoption and Foster Care Journey. I am so thankful that you are joining me today for some encouragement and community for your parenting journey. Raising kids with trauma is hard. I know that firsthand, especially if they have been prenatally exposed to alcohol or other drugs. That's like next level hard, isn't it? I'm on that journey with you as well. And I want you to know that you are not alone. We have a whole community of fellow parents and caregivers who are also on this journey, and we want to support and encourage one another. So one of the ways that we do that is our support group. So check it out here.
Sandra Flach, host of the Adoption and Foster Care Journey podcast, and FASD educator Debbie Raymond invite you to join Hope for the FASD Journey, a virtual support community for parents and caregivers raising individuals with fetal alcohol spectrum disorder, diagnosed or not. This faith-based support community meets online 3 times each month, features special VIP guests, and a private Facebook group for members only, which includes Soul Care Saturday video devotionals led by Sandra and Deb. Both Sandra and Deb are adoptive moms raising kids with FASD and facilitators of the Facets neurobehavioral model. For details and to register, visit justicefororphansny.org/hope-community. That's justicefororphansny.org/hope-community.
And many people, parents and professionals, don't realize that fetal alcohol spectrum disorders, or FASD, is the leading cause of developmental and learning disabilities worldwide. In fact, here in the United States, 1 in 20 school-age kiddos has been prenatally exposed to alcohol. Hardly anyone has heard of it, right? But those numbers are higher than even those diagnosed with autism, which is about 1 in 36, where FASD is 1 in 20. And a majority of the children in foster and adoptive placements, kiddos in the child welfare system, have been prenatally exposed. Most are not diagnosed, or they're misdiagnosed. Again, these are kids that have the whole alphabet soup of diagnoses, which, may or may not be exactly accurate, because it's highly likely that all of those are symptoms of really what's going on, and that is FASD. So regardless, so many adoptive and foster parents and kinship caregivers as well are really struggling. And as a mom myself of an 18-year-old and a soon-to-be 21-year-old, both diagnosed with fetal alcohol syndrome, I know how difficult and isolating and frustrating and hard this parenting journey can be. I don't want to scare you off, though, because there are blessings and joys along the journey, but we need help and support. And that's why we have these resources here for you, because in my early days and I've been an adoptive parent for over 20 years. And when my boys got diagnosed several years ago, I was given a pamphlet on ADHD and have a nice day. So I want you to have the support, and whatever we can do here to offer you that. In addition to the support community that you just heard that little commercial about, I also offer one-on-one coaching sessions for parents where we can really use a brain-based approach and get a better understanding of the impacts of FASD and how to better accommodate and support our kids. And workshops. I have online. I also do in person, so you can schedule me to come, but I offer every month online workshops. So in fact, coming up on Wednesday, August 14th at 7 p.m. Eastern Time, I'm offering a free online FASD workshop. And then on Thursday, August 22nd at 8 p.m., actually, I think that should be 7 p.m. Eastern, I've got a 3-hour FASD workshop. And in both of these workshops, we unpack the impacts, how alcohol in utero affects the brain and the development of the brain, and then all of the symptoms, primary, secondary, tertiary symptoms of FASD, and then how parents and caregivers can take a brain-based approach in parenting and supporting their kiddos. So I use the Facets neurobehavioral model. It is a brain-based approach. The intro to FASD offered on the 14th is free. And then the 3-hour, there is a registration fee for that. You don't need to take the free 1-hour one in order to take the 3-hour one. It's really, either or. And these are great. The free one, the 1 hour, is really great for whether you yourself as a parent or caregiver want to have a little bit of a better understanding. Maybe you're kind of new to the FASD table, but it's also great for anybody interacting with your kids. So think grandparents, babysitter, adult siblings, Sunday school teachers, youth group leaders, school teachers. My last training, I had several CASA workers who were on. So it's a great one to grandparents. I don't know if I mentioned grandparents. I've had several grandparents over the years take that one. It's free. But if you want more, especially if you are the parent or caregiver and you want to go deeper, the 3-hour one covers everything we do in the 1 hour, but takes it much deeper. So that's a great one. And then coming up in October, I'm offering what I call a deep dive into FASD, also using that brain-based approach. And it's 18 hours worth of content, and we do it once a week for 3 hours each session. And for all of my workshops, I offer certificates of completion, whether you're a parent or a professional. So you'll want to check those out. You would register for any of these workshops, the coaching, and even the support group on the Justice for Orphans website. That is justicefororphansny.org. And you would click on training at the top of the page, and you'll see in the drop down FASD, and then all of those resources are available there. You can check those out. And also, I always want to point people to my personal website, sandraflach.com, because I blog there, and I have been doing a series of blog posts where I take each individual symptom of FASD, such as, say, slow information processing, which is, our brains process information all the time. And with people with FASD, that process tends to be much slower. So what does that look like? And what can you do? How can you better support your kids? So I devote one blog post to each one of the symptoms of FASD and really unpack it there. So if you'd like to read the blog posts, you can do that. If you'd like to actually listen to the podcast version of those, you can scroll back in our catalog of podcast episodes, because I did them sporadically over about a 1.5 year period of time. So you can find them there as well. But lots of great content in all of our previous podcast episodes, as well as sandraflach.com and my blog there. So check all of that out. And of course, we want you to be able to help us reach more foster, adoptive, and kinship caregivers. So follow, subscribe to, leave a review for this podcast, the Adoption and Foster Care Journey podcast, whatever platform you're listening or watching this on. And I say watching because we are also on YouTube. So if you do like to watch your podcasts, you can do that. And that would be at the Justice for Orphans YouTube channel page. So check that out. So anyway, all of those things, those preliminary things I always have to say, I hope you'll check it out. Shoot me an email if you have questions. You can always reach me. I'm at Sandra Flach at justicefororphansny.org, and I personally respond to all my emails. So check those out and reach out to me. Now, to our guest, I'm super excited to have with us today Dr. Kimberly Offutt. Kimberly is an inspirational speaker, author, child advocate, social worker, and adoptive parent. Dr. Kim began her career in child welfare as a foster care case manager for the state of Georgia. She has served at Bethany Christian Services for more than 20 years in various capacities in the child welfare field, advocating on behalf of children who are in foster care and available for adoption. She has developed statewide and national recruitment programs, led church engagement recruitment teams, and created innovative programs focused on youth most at risk of aging out of foster care. As a speaker, leader, and program developer, Kimberly has used her unique personal and professional skills to impact the lives of children and families around the world. Kimberly and her husband, Dr. Marcus Offutt, have 7 children, 4 adopted from foster care, and 6 grandchildren. Those grandbabies are always the best. They currently live in Atlanta. So please welcome Dr. Kimberly Offutt. Hey, Kim, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here.
I am so excited to have you. We got to meet, and I didn't even realize we were going to be getting connected in an interview, but we got to meet, I think, back in April in North Carolina at the Renew retreat.
Yes.
So I heard you speak, an amazing testimony and story, and love all the work you're doing. So I'm so excited my listeners are going to get to know you.
Awesome.
Yeah. So you have I read your bio, such an amazing journey that you've been on, but I'd like to kind of go back to the beginning and see and hear, where did your passion for vulnerable children come from? Where did that start?
You know, it's really interesting that you asked that question that way, Sandra, because in the last, I would say 5 years, I've really been exploring that myself more. Because honestly, I did not know why. I did not understand my why. But I will say now I know that I saw me in the children that I was serving. I saw me in the moms that I walked alongside. I saw my mom in the families that I was serving and supporting as well. I started off my career as a foster care case manager for the state of Georgia. I worked for the Department of Family and Children's Services. And honestly, I would say, Sandra, it was the school of what not to do in so many ways. I saw too many families being represented as a number. You know, I can remember 027728. That was truly a case number for one of the families. And you could see it on the files, like the outside of the files, you see the case number. I saw too many families being represented in court as a number. And so I wanted to do something different. I wanted to step into, I didn't want to be a typical social worker, right? I didn't want to do what people thought a social worker was. I truly had this image in my head, and I'm going to describe it to you and the listeners right now. I'm smiling because I'm like, what in the world? Where did this come from? But I imagined this white woman, and she had dark hair. She had a dark blue suit on, scratchy stockings. So when you hear her walk, you can hear her when she walked with the scratchy stockings on, right? And she drove a black tinted car. And she went into people's homes, and she snatched kids out of the homes with trash bags, right, full of their stuff. And you can literally see her dragging these kids down the street, and the kids will get into cars, and you'd never see these children again. Where did I get that image from? Is that a movie? Like, I can't tell you where that even came from, but I knew I did not want to be that. But as a foster care case manager, I saw too many children, and I stayed up too many nights with too many kids that I could not find a family for. a
Mhm.
family who would be willing to take in a teen, or willing to take in the sibling group, or willing, to, in the middle of the night, to, accept the call for this youth. And that's what began my journey. That was the beginning of my journey as a foster parent and even an adoptive parent as well.
Wow. I love that because I work with our organization. We have, we facilitate the Care Portal, which I'm sure you've heard of Care Portal.
Absolutely.
We brought it to New York State, in 2018. We've expanded our organization alone has expanded into 9 counties throughout the state of New York and helped some other nonprofits launch it around the state. And we get to work directly with county caseworkers,
Mhm.
working with these families. And it is a broken system because we encounter workers who are passionate also about the children, but are so restricted in what they can do.
Mhm. Mhm.
And it's not, the system doesn't always seem right to put the kids first and the families first. And not to get into that aspect of it, but I know with Care Portal, we've heard from caseworkers who say, now I have something to offer a family instead of just being seen as the person who takes kids away.
Mhm.
Now we can come in and actually offer families help, and because through the Care Portal we're able to do that. So, I see, caseworkers who just have a heart and a passion, but yet are so limited and often, seen as the bad guys,
Mhm.
right? And you don't want to be seen as that because you have a heart and a passion
And that
for.
was, and when you think about that, so many of us, when we went to school for this degree, when we started off in this career, we didn't imagine that we would be breaking up families. We came to
Right.
help. We came to
Yeah.
serve. We came to give of ourselves. And when I say the system is broken, I think of the fact that we don't have all of the support. So things like
Mhm.
Care Portal that will allow people in real time to be able
Yeah.
to respond to a need that a family has, that could potentially keep kids out of foster care
Yes.
and safely with their families. It's a game changer
Yes.
because we all have a part that we can play. There are definitely, and I say this so as a foster and adoptive parent myself, I say this all the time, we're not all called to be foster and adoptive parents,
Right.
but we all can do something.
That's
And
right.
for 70% of the kids who are in care to have been impacted by poverty,
Right.
it's a poverty related issue. Now there are other issues, but poverty is still considered in there. Poverty should not be the reason why
Right.
children can't stay with their families. So I
Amen. Yeah.
absolutely love Care Portal. I love
Yeah.
the fact that it gives us all an
Yeah.
opportunity to serve.
Yeah. We love it. It's been a game changer, even for our organization, which was
Mhm.
for a lot of years, we were advocacy. We were, I was going into churches and speaking in churches, trying to, encourage families to pray about and consider becoming foster parents, adoptive parents. And, that's a huge ask, but I was an adoptive parent. So I felt like I could speak this message, but it's really, like you said, a very small percentage of people actually bring kids into their homes. And
Mhm.
then at the same time, it's only a very small percentage of children who are being removed from homes for things like abuse and whatnot, where they need to be removed. It's
Mhm.
a vast majority. It's for things that look like neglect, but that are really poverty driven. And
Yep.
when we found out about Care Portal and that there was really a way that we could engage everybody in a church in
Mhm.
some form or fashion, they can be involved through Care Portal. That was a game changer. And we launched Care Portal in our region at the end of 2018, and we've already served over 8,600 children in New York State, in just our region of the state. Doesn't even count like New York City or really big populated areas. So it is a game changer, but I don't want to get too much into that, but I know we're both passionate about that. But you became a foster and adoptive parent, and I do
Yep.
remember hearing this story, which is like incredible. So if you would share with us, how did that come about? You're a professional, you're working in this field, you have a passion to help vulnerable children, and
Mhm.
now you are taking kids into your home. Tell us about that.
So I like to tell stories, Sandra, so feel free to interrupt me
I
if
know I
I
love
talk too
stories.
long on this story. But remember I said I started off as a foster care caseworker in the state of Georgia. Well, I got married in 2002, and my husband was a licensed or is a licensed and ordained minister. And one of the things that in that season of my life, God kept convicting me about is being in this comfort zone. Like, you're too comfortable. You're comfortable sitting on the front pew, preacher's wife. You're comfortable in all the things that you're doing. You're comfortable in your home and your community, with your family, with the work that you're doing. You're too comfortable. I have something more for you. And something more would be literally packing what we could fit in his Mazda Protege and my Nissan Sentra. Only what we could fit in those two vehicles, we packed up when we moved to Michigan. Now, this Georgia girl who's geographically challenged didn't know where Michigan was on the map. It just sounded cold. It sounded like somewhere like this is foreign to me. Again, I worked for the state of Georgia. I had never heard of Bethany. Bethany is in Atlanta, but I worked for the state, and in Georgia, we did all of the work. So we didn't contract with private agencies. So I never heard of Bethany. But the very first thing we did when we moved to Michigan, now mind you, we didn't have a house, I didn't have a job, I didn't have family, I didn't have friends. The Lord said, Holland, Michigan, of all places, this Georgia girl landed at, okay? Bethany found me, because that's a whole nother story, and I'll talk too long on how Bethany found me in that time. But I literally started working as a recruiter at Bethany Christian Services in, was it September, somewhere around there, of 2003. And as a recruiter, the program was called Partners in Prayer. So I literally got paid to go to church, because I was building partnerships with churches. My goal was to recruit Christian families to either be a foster parent or adopt, or to wrap around these families and provide that support. And again, the same story that I've been telling for the last 20 something years was, if every church was able to raise up one family to adopt one child, the body of Christ could solve this crisis alone.
Yes.
Like, we could do this. Children should not be lingering in foster care. Okay.
That's right.
But guess what's so cool, Sandra? Have you seen the film Sound of Hope?
Yes, I have. I had the privilege of seeing the Sound of Hope in Kansas City, Missouri, at the Care Portal conference.
The conference
with and I know Bishop Martin, because we go Bishop Martin and I go back far enough to where back in 2014, this is before our organization was doing Care Portal, we brought Bishop Martin in 2014 twice to New York, to the Capital Region area, to speak at some conferences where we were trying to recruit foster and adoptive families. So we brought him in twice. And I remember him telling me way back then, because I had read the book, because, many years ago, there was a book first. It was Small Town, Big Miracle. I'd read the book, and he kept saying, this story is going to be on the big screen. And I'm like, okay, you say it, I believe it, because, and I bump into him every year at CAFO, the Christian Alliance for Orphans Summit. We take our selfie, we chat for a few minutes. And sure enough, that story is now on the big screen. Yeah.
Well, he had been saying that since I've known him back in 2003. Our program, Partners in Prayer, was based on the Martin story.
Wow.
So literally, I met, back then he was Reverend Martin, not Bishop Martin, but I met Reverend Martin in October of 2003. And I'll never forget that. And this is how his story impacted mine. So here I am sitting in this big old boardroom, and we had brought in all of these leaders all across the state of Michigan, foster care workers, adoption workers, representatives from the state. And we were in this big room, right? And on our table were these little slips of paper, and there were names on these slips of paper, right? And I remember picking up the name of this name on the paper. It was Del Quan, spelled D-E-L, capital Q-U-A-N. I could see it as I'm spelling out the name to you right now. What I did not know until we were done, because the goal was for us to put these names together, staple them together, and to link up. So we were like chain linked around, and we filled up the entire room, right? So just imagine all of us sitting in a big room with these chain link of names. That is when he told us the names represented children in the state of Michigan who were available for adoption. And there were 350 of us in this room.
Wow.
So 350 names, I'm just saying 350 names, because I doubt it was 350 people, but it was 350 names that we had chain linked together, and we were representing all the kids in the state of Michigan. And he was really compelling us to think about and truly pray about our role in this crisis. What can we do? And I remember just feeling this prickling in my heart as he's talking to me. Now I'm 25 years old. No, I think I just turned 26 that year. I'm 25, 26 years old. My husband and I had only been married for a year. He was 23 or 24 at that time. And Reverend Martin is saying, if not you, then who?
Who? Mm-hmm.
If not now, then when?
Mm.
Oh, Lord.
Yeah.
I'll never forget that. I had to go home and have the talk with my husband about this, and then I believe, well, I shared this story with him, but seeing my son, his picture in the photo book back then, the adoption exchanges actually printed the photo books. The kids who are on the adoption exchanges, they don't even print them anymore because by the time they're printed, they're out of date. More kids have been added, kids have been taken off. But my son was this 9-year-old little boy who had been in foster care since he was the age of 5. And I remember having to go home and just tell my husband that I truly believe God gave me a mother's heart for this child. 9-year-old Delquan.
Wow. So the boy who you got his name on that piece of paper.
9-year-old Delquan.
Wow.
For me to have that slip, for me to have that experience, like we truly thought if we were going to foster adopt, it's going to be a little person. It's going to be a 1-year-old, a 2-year-old. My mama used to say, if you feed a child enough, they'll look like you and they'll forget all this stuff. So in my mind, I'm thinking little people would be the people that we would foster or adopt. And I had to go home and tell my husband that this 9-year-old little boy, remember Delquan, remember Reverend Martin, remember that experience, this 9-year-old little boy, baby, this is our son. This is our son. I truly believe this is our son. My name, he changed my name that day. He doesn't call me Kim to this day. He calls me Kay. It's like, Kay, what do you mean? We haven't had our own kids yet.
Yeah.
We were newlyweds, 26 and 24. So let me just dispel all the myths for any adoptive parent, anybody even considering it. They're listening to this podcast, hey, age doesn't matter. If God is calling you, he's equipping you, and even for a 9-year-old or a teenager as well. Because from there, God just opened up our hearts from there. The 9-year-old was the first one to call me mom. He's 29 today. If I go in chronological order, my oldest child is 30. She joined our family at 14. Next in line is my 29-year-old who joined our family at 9. And then there's my 27-year-old who's the sibling to the 30-year-old. He joined our family at 11. And then my youngest adoption and the hardest adoption, he's 19 today, but he was 2.5 when we adopted him. Wow. And then right under him is my 18-year-old, 8 months apart between the 19 and the 18-year-old.
Wow.
So 18 years old, 13-year-old, and 7-year-old. And I have 6 grandbabies in there as well.
Yeah. Well, grandbabies are the best, but I don't have to tell you that.
Oh, yeah. I heard someone say, if I knew having grandchildren was this much fun, I would have had them first. I'm like,
absolutely.
That's hilarious.
That is true. That is so true. I can say that because I have 8 kids, 5 of them through adoption.
Wow.
And I have 8 grandchildren, and the grandchildren are way more fun, but
way more fun.
Way more fun. But, speaking of our kids and, and as you know, and I know our listeners know, kids who come in through the system, they've experienced some level of loss, some level of trauma, and you're getting older kids, right? And all of our kids who came in, like our kids our first adoption was a kinship, and she came at 8, and then we did a sibling set that were 9, 7, and 3, and then the last one was 5. But they come in with trauma. They come in possibly with that prenatal exposure to alcohol or other drugs. You guys were young. You hadn't parented yet, at all. So what was that like, bringing all that fun trauma into your home? How did you get equipped? Like, tell us about the blessed chaos.
You're like, what was that like? It was chaos. No, you don't know what you don't know.
That's right.
First of all. So even in that, it's like, I didn't know how to be a mom.
Right.
I had examples of good mothers. I even had examples of not so good mothers. I
Mhm.
knew what I didn't want to be, and I also knew what I felt like I should be. And I was a little mix of all of that.
Yeah.
Because if I'm honest, I didn't do everything right.
Right.
You don't get a manual when you have
That's
a
right.
baby by birth, right? What to do, what not to do. You get a little bit of training in being a foster parent and adoptive
Mhm.
parent, but you also bring your own stuff
Yeah.
to this journey as well.
Yeah.
And I tell adoptive mom, I feel like I can be transparent in this call because I'm amongst,
Yes.
those who have been there and done that. So what I'm
Yeah.
going to say to you, you'll understand. Like there's a degree of when I'm a trainer, I train. I know this, right? But
Right.
what's up here in your head
Mhm.
and what's in your heart, sometimes it's two very different things. I know what to do, but when I'm in the thick of it,
Yeah.
did I respond well to this? Did I handle this situation well?
Yeah.
Am I causing more trauma because I have my own
Right.
things? It was a whole hot mess. And I
Yeah.
did it with a smile to some degree and a whole bunch of tears, a whole bunch of prayer, and a whole bunch of needing extra support, a whole bunch of humility and apologizing.
Yep.
Because to be able to say, I messed up. Mama
Mhm.
didn't understand. I should have asked more questions. I should have, to be able to go through that. But I recognize, number one, you can't do this alone. You need support. You need
That's
to
right.
ask for help. Too many adoptive parents, and I was one of them. I took this on as, okay, Lord, this is my burden to bear. I did this to our family. I did this to our extended family. Now I can't put this on them. They didn't
Right.
sign up for this. So I didn't accept the supports. People
Mhm.
wanted to help. People wanted to provide, can I help with, they didn't call it respite, but send the baby over here. I'll watch,
Yeah.
kind
Yeah.
of a thing.
Yeah.
But I'm like, no, 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 because they don't know these things about my child because I'm not sharing
Right.
these things. He's not safe in this way. I'm protecting his story.
Right.
I'm concerned about how what if he steals from you? What if these things happen? So I'm
Right.
protecting, all the things. Oh gosh, it was hard.
Yeah. It
It
was
was
hard. And you were a professional because you were a social worker. You had all that professional training, but still it's hard.
It was hard. I had a
Yeah.
lot of head knowledge. I had a
Yeah.
lot of degrees. I knew what we trained. I understand trauma. Well, I didn't understand trauma. I learned. My son taught me a lot about trauma.
Yeah.
And I would tell families, be sure that you just absorb it. Like anything that you could learn about trauma and its impact on the brain, Dr. Bruce
Yeah.
Perry, all the things. If you
Mhm.
haven't read the book, The Boy Who Was Raised as a Dog, I'm sure you've read it, Sandra.
I haven't read that one actually.
The
I'm gonna write it
Boy
down.
Who Was Raised as a Dog. Every person who has any contact with children should read that book, period. Because it helps you understand, even the kids, I tell teachers about this because our children may not be in foster care. They may be in having experiences that, is moderate trauma or mild trauma, and they're still safely in their homes. If you haven't read the book, The Boy Who Was Raised as a Dog, it teaches you all about the neuroscience behind the brain and why trauma literally hardwires the brain. Remember when I told you my hardest adoption was 2.5? My son was 2.5 when he joined my family. And I really thought when I met him and he called me mama, I thought that was so sweet, but it wasn't. My son had no attachment to any adult, anybody, because in the first 3 years of his life, the attachment was broken. He had so many different caretakers. That was his neglect. There's so many different caretakers and homelessness and all. He wasn't abused. He was neglected because of the homelessness and lack of connection with his bio mom. So here he is with me, mom. But guess what? He plops in anybody's lap at daycare. Mom, strangers anywhere, mom. I mean, scariest child to raise. He didn't cry. He knew to cry, his needs wasn't going to get met. So like I didn't know he had ear infections or his throat hurt or this was
Yeah.
2.5. So if you have not read The Boy Who Was Raised as a Dog, there's a story in there truly about a boy who was raised as a dog, and how just the way that we can provide that love and that support and that consistency can re-hardwire a child.
Yeah.
Game changer.
That is so true. And I will be ordering that book as soon as we end the interview. But I had a similar experience with one of mine where, he got up one morning and his little cheek was out. He was probably 6, out like this, right? Like he had a big baseball in his chin. And I right away knew like this is an infected tooth. And he walked by me like nothing was going on. And I stopped him. I'm like, does your mouth hurt? And he's like, oh yeah.
Yeah.
And never had woken up in the night. And with teeth, it's hurting for a long time before it looks like that, right? Didn't even know that he could come to me and tell me he had this pain. Was used to living with it.
Same thing. That little one, the night that he was finally officially placed in our home, his first night there, the next morning I'm putting my finger under his nose because it's like 10 o'clock and he's still asleep. Like you don't wake a waking baby or sleeping.
Right.
So it's like 2.5. He's 2.5. And I'm like, why is he still asleep? It's 10 o'clock. I literally took him to the doctor that morning because he had a slight temperature. He ate pancakes and waffles. He drank his orange juice, all the things before we left. Come to find out, the boy had a double ear infection. He had bronchitis and strep throat. He did not cry. He did not complain. He ate all of his food. I'm like, what is going on?
Yeah.
Trauma.
For sure. For sure. And I know in many of our listeners, myself included, our kids have the trauma, but they also they were also prenatally exposed to alcohol. So then there's, the impact that has on brain development. And that's another whole level, so you have to understand both of those things because you're really dealing with a differently wired brain.
Exactly.
So our parenting approach has to be completely different. And we all make mistakes until we recognize that, and we still make mistakes even when we know because it's hard. But being on that journey and learning, right? We don't know what we don't know, but once we do know it, we have to apply that and do better and continuously learn so that we can better support our kids. So
absolutely. Something as simple as time ins instead of time outs.
Yeah.
My mama would sit me in time out. It hurt me to be away or to go sit on my bed for 3 minutes because I'm 3 years old or whatever. Right. Stuff that they teach you, but my son needed time in.
Yeah.
He needs to connect with you.
Yes.
Something absolutely. As simple as that. Yeah. Reframing a lot of the things that you would think would be the natural response to if your child is stealing snacks from his peers. I would go and fill up a snack cabinet and just say, hey, pick whatever you want, whatever you like. Here are all of your snacks. My parents didn't understand that. My friends were like, what? You're giving them a whole snack cabinet?
Yeah.
Yes. You have to parent a child who does not have that emotional, natural connection to you very differently. You can't discipline them the same.
That's right.
Parent them the same.
That's
right. Understand that initially. That kind of stuff you learn as you go. School of hard knocks was what my 9-year-old was for me.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. And I remember that because our first placement was a kinship. She was a relative. And because she hadn't been in foster care before she came to us, us taking her prevented that from happening. We had no training. We had 3 biological kids, so we thought we knew what we were doing, right?
Yeah.
So it was hard. It was difficult. Eventually we did adopt her, and then we went and we did an international adoption, and we adopted 3 siblings. And I tell this story, my listeners are familiar with it. It's like, it was hard, but there was nothing like, it was exhausting and crazy, but it was okay. There wasn't any major issues. And then we went back a couple of years later to adopt the youngest sibling. And he was the one that initially got diagnosed with fetal alcohol syndrome first. But when we got him, we knew we were nowhere near equipped to parent him. And at that point, that's when, I think this was 2010, I found the Connected Child book by Dr. Karen Purvis, devoured that book. I ended up, I think I flew from New York to Nashville, my husband and I, to be in one of her trainings when she was still alive and doing in-person trainings, and just began to devour all that. And then my eyes were open to like, all of my kids,
Mhm.
all of these kids have experienced trauma. Like there's a little bit of something with all of them here. And then just having to learn a completely different way of parenting. So, absolutely. I love what you're saying there. So how are little, before we move on, let's just see, how are your kids all doing now? I know they're all grown. You've got 6 grandkids. How's everybody doing?
So, good and okay in so
Yeah.
many ways. Um, Starting from the top, my daughter is 30. She's working a full-time job. She's doing well parenting all 4 of her kids. I'm so super proud of her.
Mm,
But I'm blocked on social media and Instagram and by phone right now. You know, you go through that thing where the
yep.
kids decide they don't want to talk to you and they
Right.
don't want you, whatever. So I'm blocked. So I can't tell you how she's been this year.
Yep. I hear
She
you.
ain't talking to me,
Yeah.
but her sibling is keeping me updated on everything. And I have my Facebook page that is not really me, so I can snoop. You know, we
Yeah.
have to do that. We
We
have
do
to
it.
on our adult kids through social media. But she's doing amazing. And I am so super proud of her. I doubt she'll ever hear this podcast, but anytime I have an opportunity to say, Lele, I love you and I'm super proud of you, I'm going to
Yeah.
say that. My 29-year-old, he has his own detailing business. He's doing really well as well. I have 2 granddaughters from him. Both of them still live in Michigan. My 27-year-old still working full time. He's single. I'm so glad because all he knows how to cook is ramen noodles. So he's single, no kids, none of that stuff, but he's doing well. He's holding down a full-time job. My 19-year-old is out in California. So he's living his best life right now. And he is in independent business. He's selling magazines or something, but like he'll call me. I just talked to him yesterday. Hey mom, I'm out here in LA and FaceTime and doing all this stuff. So he's doing really well. My 18-year-old will be going to college in 3 weeks. So super excited. He's not going too far away. My 13-year-old is going to 8th grade and we're going back to public school, which I'm really excited about. And my 7-year-old, he's good too. Like all of them are doing good in
Yeah.
their own ways, but
Yeah.
parenting adult children, I wish there was a manual for that.
Yeah.
That
Oh,
is,
yeah. That's different.
it
Oh,
is very,
yes.
very different, very
Yeah.
challenging. You have
Yes.
to shift in, your role and being sure that like my hope has always been that my kids could always pick up the phone and call me and that they'll listen and they'll
Mhm.
remember.
Yeah.
Like, here's why I had these rules. Here's why I set
Mhm.
these parameters. Do you understand this and that type of thing? But
Yeah.
to shift to being a coach in
Mhm.
so many ways,
Yeah. Yes, you do.
yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. It is hard. It's a totally different ball game with adult children. And that's why I like the grandkids better because
yeah,
but we love them all. We love them all.
yeah,
But let's pivot a little bit. I want to talk about your work with Bethany Christian Services. I
yeah.
know our listeners probably have heard of Bethany. Bethany believes every child, right, deserves to be safe, loved, and connected through family. They're a global nonprofit supporting children and families with world-class social services designed to help families thrive. So, Kim, share with us your role at Bethany. What are you doing there?
Well, I'm really excited because I'm in a very new role for me. I've been at Bethany for this is 21 years. It'll be 21 years this year in September. Most of my career at Bethany, I've been in the foster care adoption, recruitment, church engagement vein, moving up towards expanding the work that I was doing statewide, nationwide, providing support to our staff all across the different branches and in different states. And I recently, in March, accepted a new role. So I am the executive branch director for our Georgia and Alabama offices. So all the things that I feel like it's really interesting. I tell people all the time when I talk about this role, it's like I feel like God took 20 years to cook me up. Like 20 years of these
Yeah.
leadership opportunities, these opportunities to make connections around the world, these opportunities to support foster parents and adoptive parents, to walk alongside young people who aged out of the foster care system. Like, haven't got a chance to tell too many people about Brittany, who's my mentee, who literally walked up to me and said, will you take me? And she's 30,
Mm.
like So many
Aw.
stories I can even tell you about her because the work that I've done has just grown and expanded. But in the last 4 months, I've been the executive branch director for Bethany, Georgia, and I get to do a lot of fun stuff. And I get
Oh,
to really all the ideas and thoughts and plans and things that I could recommend, now I can implement. Before I was recommending them, before I was saying, hey, here's a tool, before I was saying, hey, here's a training, here's something that I strongly encourage. Now I can implement and
yeah.
I could really work on the culture within the organization and who do we want Bethany, Georgia to be known as and
Yeah.
what do we want people to think of when they see our name? And it's about family for me. So
Yeah.
it's all about family, whether that is this child's family of origin, their kinship family, foster family, adoptive family. What is our role as a community? How can
Yeah.
we all be a part of
Mm.
this work? So, yeah.
I love that. Love that. Love what you're doing. So obviously you're back, you came back to Georgia from
7 years ago.
up there in
Yeah.
Michigan, where it does get very cold. And I'm sure today in Georgia, it's very hot.
Very. But I will never complain about the
Never
weather.
complain about that.
Mm-mm.
Awesome. So if our listeners want to learn more about Bethany, what's the web address that they can go there and check it out?
Really simple, Bethany.org.
Love that. Love that. And just kind of checking my notes here because I want to make sure I stay on track because there's so many different things. Anything else you want to tell us about Bethany because I want to ask you about your book. I know that wasn't on the list, but I found out you wrote a book and I'm like, we got to talk about that.
No, when I think about Bethany and I think about who we are becoming as an organization, I think it's important for our listeners to know that Bethany's been around since 1944, right?
Yeah.
And since 1944, we've been known as an adoption organization.
Right.
But that need has shifted and changed so much, and our focus has shifted in a lot of ways too, along with the times. So yes, there is a need for families to step forward to adopt, but Bethany has become so much more than adoption. So really working on the family strengthening, family preservation,
Yes.
family empowerment. Again, when you think about the fact that so many of our kids and families are separated because of poverty-related issues, how do we get on the front end? How do we involve ourselves before there's a need for family separation? How do we support families who could potentially be in crisis before a crisis ever happens? So what does this community support look like for our communities to be healthy? How do we raise healthy families and healthy marriages and all these things so there won't be any trauma or any abuse or any neglect, like to be on the front end of that. And then to also, when there is a crisis and there are situations, how do we come around and support? What could we do to empower our churches and our communities and individuals to step in and wrap around this young mom, this young family, or, this young person who may have whatever it is going in their life. So to be involved in that space. And yet, then again, if you move down the line, there is a need. I'm sure there's a need at some point if safety is an issue for foster parents to step in. But again, our ask of foster parents isn't the same. We have families who step forward and their goal is to grow their family through adoption. Well, foster care, the goal is ultimately reunification.
That's right.
So foster parent, how can you come in, step in, care for this child, but also care about their family?
Yes.
To provide that support to their family, to speak into and be their network and their extension of them as well. And to really do that. And that's changing. Like foster parents didn't typically do that. I'm all about the child. So to really change that narrative as well. And then of course, adoption. But if we're able to in any kind of way to keep these children within their families of origin, if that's a grandma, auntie, uncle, cousin, whoever.
The kinship part.
Kinship care as much as we can. Again, that's a focus as well. So as I look at all the things, Bethany, and how I want Bethany, Georgia to really make that impact, it's growing our youth and our young adult programs to really focus on family strengthening and preservation, safe families, home builders, all the things that really focus on that. But again, to continue nurturing and supporting the families who are stepping up and stepping into that space to care. our foster and adoptive parents as well. We salute you because you're amazing and we need you.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
I love that. I love the family preservation piece. I know Bethany's been on the cutting edge of that shift from, foster, adopt, but how can we preserve the life-giving family, right? The family of origin. And that's one of the reasons why I love what we're doing with Care Portal here in New York, is because we get to play an active role in that, because that's the best place for kids when it's safe, right? There's those times where it's not safe and they need to be removed for a time, but then it's reunification. So, we want to champion those families of origin and be able to support, because that's best. That's what's best for the kiddos, right? So that's what we want to see. So love what you guys are doing. And like you said, it's bethany.org, correct? Is the website. We'll make sure we have a link in the show notes so our listeners can go there and check out, because you guys have amazing programs and work you're doing all around the country. I know that you are in leadership there for Georgia and Alabama, correct?
Yes.
Love that. I do want to ask you about your book. It's called They Need You Now, One Mother's Plea for the Church to Embrace Adoption. You said you wrote that during COVID. Tell us about your book.
So one of the things that I found myself saying a lot as a recruiter trainer, and when I would do orientations and share my story, depending on where I'm at, you've heard various versions of my story. It's still the same story, but just different pieces of it, right? I would say one day when I get some time, I'm going to write a book. Well, COVID gave me a lot of time, right?
Yeah.
Like totally shifted and changed the way I spent my time. I'm working remotely, all the things. So in 2020, I wrote They Need You Now. And in that book, I shared a lot of the stories that I shared now. It's just, again, it shared my personal story in taking this step in being a foster parent and adoptive parent, but it also shared the biblical principles behind it. And at the end of every chapter is a prayer. And that's what I absolutely love about the book. It's just to be able to go through and pray for and pray with that person who's reading and who may feel that call, who may have those questions, who may be concerned, who may think, what about birth order? Or what about this? Or do I have enough? Am I enough? Maybe I'm too old. Maybe I'm too young. Maybe I don't know enough. How do all the things? And literally each chapter addresses all the things. And we're able to pray with you as well. So They Need You Now. If you don't mind, Sandra, I want to just tell this one story that really tied into even the reason why I titled the book that way. And I share this story in, I think, one of the final chapters of the book, but he was 15 years old. His name is Carlos. And I met Carlos when I was doing this program called Project Open Arms, and we were really focused on youth most at risk of aging out of the foster care system, where Carlos had to submit for a poster contest why it was so important to him to find a forever family. Like, what did it mean to him to have a forever family? And on the poster, you can tell it was himself. You can see his mustache, you can see his goatee. And on his t-shirt was an hourglass, and you could see the sand dropping. And across the top of the hourglass, it said, "Time is running out." That changed my world. And that was in 2010, I believe. He submitted that. And I tell on any stage I get an opportunity to, I share about Carlos, I share his story, because we have families who just need to know that our kids, they need you right now. If not you, who? If not now, when? They need you now. The doors to the foster care system will close. And these children are out here on their own. And that should never be. There are families who are looking to adopt, and they're thinking, like I did, 2 or 3-year-old, right?
Yeah.
And there's a 14, 15, 16-year-old who needs you. And adoption doesn't end at the age of 18. We've already talked about that, parenting adult children.
Yeah.
So if you have listeners who are like, is this what God is calling me to do? This is your sign that there's a teenager out there who needs you now.
Yeah. And teenagers can be such a scary breed, but they're also amazing. They're also amazing. So definitely we all need to be praying that prayer and obediently following what the Lord is calling us to do, right? Because I think when we do that, that's something I've always said, when we pray about it, because I don't think everybody is praying about it. I remember I remember reading a book, the name of it is escaping me, but it was a little booklet. And it was like 3% of Christians will actually bring children into their home. It was like a very low percentage. So then I'm like, well, what are the other 97% going to do? Because we're all called to do something. But I do believe that it should be higher than 3%, because if we all sought God's heart, what would you have me to do? And then walked it out in obedience.
Yeah.
That number would be way higher. And that could be, that pivotal change in the foster care system. So that is, that's the goal, right? So we need to be praying about that. Where can we get a copy of your book?
Oh, it's on Amazon.
Amazon. All right.
Yeah.
So they need you now.
They need you now.
All right. And we'll make sure we have a link to that, because that's so important too. As I mentioned, most of our listeners are adoptive, foster, kinship caregivers. You are an adoptive parent. You've been working in this field for a couple of decades. Would you offer, like, what advice or encouragement would you offer to our foster, adoptive, and kinship caregivers listening?
One of the things, I guess the best thing, and I don't want this to sound too, I don't know what it would sound, but cheesy. I don't know. Pray. Pray. I mean it. And just like you said, Sandra, pray, but be willing and open to do whatever it is that you hear God telling you to do when you pray. Pray enough to be willing to listen and to act on it. If you're praying about whether you should be a foster and adoptive parent in the first place, or if you should take in this teenager or whomever else that they may have called you about, or if you found out one of your children has a sibling, pray for these children, pray for their families, pray for your heart. One of the things that I learned, and I used to tell families this all the time, being an adoptive parent, it's ministry. Just like being married is ministry. There's things that God worked out in my heart as a married person that he could have never have done as a single person, right? There are things that he's going to work out in you as an adoptive parent, as a foster parent, that he could have never worked out in you.
That's right.
As a parent of biological children.
Right.
This is different. You're going to know God's heart in a way that will blow your mind. This is ministry. So praying about this, never stop praying. Never stop getting on your knees. Never stop getting on your face. Never stop surrendering your will and your way, your thoughts, your hearts, your action. Never stop, and stay open.
Yeah.
Even as I sit here today and I think about, there's so many stories that I could tell you that have broken me in this season. There are times that I've wanted to quit, that I've wanted to throw my hands up and say, I know I missed you, Lord. You did not call me to this. This is not what you're asking of me. But because I know that I know that I know, just like I know I'm a Black woman, there's no doubt about that, right?
Right.
I know that my yes to this was because of a calling that he had for me. He chose me for this, and he's equipped me for this. And there's strength in that.
Yeah.
I have confidence in that. I can lean on him and be led by him through this because he's bigger. His shoulders are broader. Pray. Pray and trust.
Yeah. Love that. Love that. Thank you for that encouraging word. Speaking of stories, let's talk about Possum Trot, right? The Sound of Hope, produced by Angel Studios.
Yes.
I know that you know the story. Bishop Martin. You go way back with that story. I shared a little bit about my connection to it. I've seen the movie. It's in theaters now. So we want to make sure that our listeners will, if you have not seen the Sound of Hope, the story of Possum Trot, you have to. And Kim, why do we have to?
I'm telling you, you will, first of all, there's so much affirmation in the story as an adoptive parent.
Yeah.
I saw myself in Lady Donna. Lady Donna is me, and I'm Lady Donna. Just the struggle, the pain, the desire, the brokenness of it all, the community, the strength, the power in community, the power of prayer, the way that God's hand was just on the lives of these people.
Yes.
It's going to make you cry. It's going to give you hope. truly give you hope for the future. Like I love, and I don't want to ruin anything, but just to know what the families went through and to see, 20 years later, where the family is so beautiful. I'm telling you, the name is perfect. It's the sound of hope.
It is.
It's absolutely perfect.
It is. And I highly recommend every one of our listeners go to the movie theater, bring a friend,
Bring a
tell
friend.
others, share. It's all over social media, share it, but go see the movie because it is life-changing. And those of us who are in, we are foster adoptive kinship parents, you're going to get it because this is a picture of the life that we all live, really. And just the hope and a reminder of how the Holy Spirit works through us and can transform the lives of children and us families, right? And a community. It's just an amazing story and so well done. And so they didn't sugarcoat it.
Not at all.
It is very transparent and real and raw. And some of it sometimes is hard to see, especially if you're not familiar. I know our audience is, but if you're not familiar with adoption and foster care and children, coming from trauma histories, it's hard to see, but it's the reality. And then just the heart of First Lady Donna and Bishop Martin. It's just, they're real people. I mean, you go way back with him. I see him, annually, but we brought him to New York twice and just got to spend, have meals with him, spend time with him, and just genuine, love the Lord. Bishop Martin can't not talk about the Lord and the children. And it's just in the fabric of who he is. So highly recommend it. Please go see The Sound of Hope. And there's action steps at the end. And there's something for everybody to do, whether you go on to become an adoptive parent or a foster parent, kinship, respite, even helping, you can meet needs through the care portal, if you want to somehow get involved. So, look it up online, find it in a theater near you, make sure that you are going to see that movie. It's life-changing. And I've heard from so many people that I know here, because I got to see it back in April and now it's released. And I know so many people who are going to see it and I'm seeing their testimonies and they're like, wow, everybody needs to see it. So please do.
Please.
Yeah. And I also wanted to ask you, because I opened with Jeremiah 29:11, right? For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord. Plans to prosper you, not to harm you, plans to give you a hope. Talk about giving us a hope and a future. You chose that verse, Kim. Why Jeremiah 29:11?
So Jeremiah 29:11 is like God's special promise to me. I really feel like a lot of the promises in the Bible, because I'm his special daughter. Like I'm his favorite. He is speaking.
Me too.
No, that's my dad. Like, sincerely, I'm like, no, he is speaking to me. There's so many times in my life that I truly had to lean on that scripture, because the reality is I didn't know what was next for me. I don't know. He does. I know the plans that I have for you. So when was times like I'm leaving Georgia to go to Michigan, Lord, I know the plans that I have for you. Even when I talk to young people that I've walked alongside and families that I've served and supported, I know the plans that I have for you. Plans to prosper you, not to harm you, to give you hope in the future. There's such promise in that. And so it's a scripture that any opportunity that I have to speak, every stage that I stand on, I've shared that scripture. I've shared that promise because it brings me hope as well. And it allows me to trust him in all these things that I don't know and I don't understand and I don't see, but he does.
But he does. Amen to that. So as we wrap up, Kim, any last thoughts on your heart that you want to make sure our listeners hear before we go?
I don't know. As I'm thinking about this time that we've had together, I'm just grateful. I'm grateful for the opportunity to be amongst family, to be able to share our hearts and to be able to just have this time to reflect and to encourage one another. And I would just encourage you to continue to reach out, to continue to build relationships with the foster care and adoption and kinship community as well, to lean on one another, to support one another, because we can't do this work alone. We just can't. We need community. Our children need community as well. We were built for community. That's how we're wired. So thank you for this opportunity to share.
Thank you. Thank you for being on the show today. Thank you for all that you're doing on behalf of the adoption and foster care community and all the amazing family preservation work that you're a part of. Everything that Bethany is doing, we'll make sure that we have a link to bethany.org in the show notes, and we'll tag them in our social media as well. Kim, thank you so much. It's been such a blessing and an honor to have a conversation with you today.
Thank you again. I appreciate you, Sandra.
Thank you. Same here, Kim. Wow, that was such a wonderful conversation with Dr. Kimberly Offutt. I hope and trust that you were inspired and encouraged by her work and her story today. We'll make sure that we put links in the show notes so that you can find bethany.org. And also, Kim is on a lot of the social media. She's got Facebook and Instagram and all that. We'll make sure that we let you know how to find her there as well. And her book, we'll have a link to that as well. So check that all out. Also, remember that we are here to encourage you and equip you for your foster and adoptive kinship, unique parenting journey, right? Again, I'm a mom of 2 young adults with fetal alcohol syndrome. I'm a facilitator of the Facets neurobehavioral model, brain-based approach, whether you're just dealing with the trauma, the trauma stuff is hard, right? But adding, the prenatal exposure is next level hard. We want to make sure that you are equipped for your journey. Passionate I am about training and teaching and coming alongside and supporting. We have those resources. I offer the coaching, the FASD online and in-person training, as well as the support group, which is, a lifeline for so many families that are part of that support group. So please check out all of those resources on our website, justicefororphans.ny.org/FASD, or just look for the FASD tab at the top of the page. Link in the show notes for our website and all of the things that we mentioned today. Find and follow us on social media at Justice for Orphans. We're on Facebook and Instagram. You can find me, Sandra Flach, at both of those places as well. I am so grateful that you spent your valuable time with me today. I'm so grateful to have you along for the journey.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Adoption and Foster Care Journey podcast, brought to you by Justice for Orphans. We hope you were encouraged today. Please be sure to subscribe to this podcast and leave a review, and share it with your fellow foster and adoptive parent friends so they can be encouraged too. Be sure to find and follow us on Facebook and Instagram at Justice for Orphans, and check out our website for vital resources at justicefororphansny.org.